wanted to talk to you first a little bit about metadata. Regardless of how you read Smith v. Maryland, and regardless of whether you think under Smith v. Maryland and its progeny, a constitutional case can be made for the collection of this data as it relates to American citizens, wouldn't you agree that at some point, when you amass an enormous volume of metadata on American citizens and you retain within the federal government the capacity to search that data, targeting potentially specific Americans, that gives the U.S. government a lot of power to peer into things that are, by their nature, very private?
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why, in the interim, before we come up with whatever our proposals are going to be, the President has indicated that in querying that database now, we should only do so through use of judicial authorization. And so that ultimately may be something that we want to enshrine in the program, but that is what the President has asked us to do in the interim, unless there's an emergency situation.
Right. So you would make that tantamount to a warrant, in other words, and because right now what you have are internal operating procedures, internal regulations that can be changed, whereas if we put that in law, that would provide greater protection.
I think we want to try to work out what the mechanism might be so that we would afford the appropriate amount of protection while at the same time not having a negative impact on the operational abilities of people who need to potentially get access to that information on a pretty quick basis. But I think one thing we should understand is that although there might be billions of records in those metadata bases, I think the number for last year was, in terms of the number of queries that were made of that database, was about 300 or so.
I understand that. And I think for purposes of this discussion, even if we were to assume that all of the men and women serving us within the NSA, even if they are acting in good faith and abiding by their own rules, at some point there is a very grave risk of abuse